Okay, so we're in chapter 3, and this is part 2. So Paul's been making the point that Jews and Gentiles are both under sin, guilty before God, equally guilty, and desperately need his forgiveness. And what he does at this point is he quotes 7 Old Testament passages and strings them all together in a line to prove his point. Here's what he says. As it is written, there is none righteous, not even one. There is none who understands. There is none who seeks for God. All have turned aside. Together they have become useless. There is none who does good. There is not even one. Their throat is an open grave. With their tongues they keep deceiving. The poison of asps is under their lips, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Destruction and misery are in their paths, and the path of peace they have not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes. So it's interesting that Paul backs up everything that he teaches in Romans with the Old Testament. He wants the believers in the Church of Rome to know that what he is teaching is not from himself, that it is totally consistent with the scriptures that they have, which would be the Old Testament. And his point rings very clear that everybody before God is guilty. So Paul continues on to talk about the law. He talks about the Old Testament law, and he talks about just the general concept of law and how the law brings us all to a place of being guilty before God. Here's what he says. Now, whatever the law says, it speaks to those who are under the law, so that every mouth may be closed and all the world may become accountable to God. Because by the works of the law, no flesh will be justified in his sight, for through the law comes the knowledge of sin. So the Jews had an opportunity to obey the law and earn their way to be accepted by God. And of course, they broke the law in every possible way, and we all have. And so they showed the world that it is not possible to be accepted by God by obeying the Old Testament law. Also, in the Greek, when it says that no flesh will be justified by works of the law, the article, definite article, the, is not present. So in other words, what it truly says in the Greek is that no flesh will be justified in his sight by works of law. So what he's talking about there is not the Old Testament laws, he's talking about any kind of laws. So no one will be justified or accepted by God by doing of any kind of performance. That could be the Old Testament laws. It could be going to church every Sunday and reading your Bible and helping old ladies cross the street or praying every day or whatever your list is. There are no works of any kind of law that will gain acceptance before God. In fact, the purpose of the law is not justification. It is not a roadmap to be able to gain God's acceptance or his forgiveness. Not at all. It's actually the opposite. It's condemnation. The purpose of the law is to show us our sin so that we see our need for forgiveness. It's kind of like a mirror. You use a mirror to show what you look like and be able to see the dirt on your face, so to speak. And when you look at God's laws, do not lie, do not steal, do not covet, you see, oh my goodness, I'm guilty. Just like a mirror shows you the dirt on your face. You would not use a mirror to clean your face. That's not its purpose. It's only to show you the dirt that you have. And so Paul's point here is that the purpose of the law is to condemn. It's to show that you have sin and you need salvation. So to sum up this whole section, Paul makes clear that the barbarians are guilty because they have creation. They should know that there's a God who they will become accountable to. The cultured Gentiles, the Greeks, they have the conscience and they break that moral code all the time and they're guilty. And the Jews, despite any objections they might have, they are also guilty. In fact, the law shows them that they are guilty. And it is advantageous to be Jewish. You have the oracles of God and many promises from God, but when it comes to salvation, there's really no advantage. Both the Jew and the Gentile, everybody is guilty before God, desperately needing salvation. This is the bad news, and now Paul is going to get to the good news. But before we get there, let's think about application. Have you come to a place in your life where you truly accept that you desperately need God's forgiveness and there's nothing you can do to save yourself? That you're not more good than bad and really hoping that's going to gain you acceptance from God? That truly what would be rightly deserved is separation from God forever as a judgment because of your sin. We don't need to be morbid, but we do need to be realistic. We must come to a place where we see that we need God. That is what prepares us to receive the good news of salvation that He offers freely. So have you come to that place? Take some time, pray about it.